the minutes from, was it just last week? No, it was 2 weeks ago. From December 21st. I was not here for those. I have read the minutes, but as I was not here, I will make no motions and I will abstain from any voting in regards to that, the minutes.
Perfect, Tim. Oh, good.
Sandy, I'll go get you one. I printed out another one for you.
Oh, it's good.
Remember I told you?
Yeah. There. There it is.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the 21st? I'm willing to entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from December 21st as presented. Is there any question, comments, discussion in regards to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I abstain. Okay, motion is moved. Before we actually get into what we really need to do tonight, the rest of the agenda is to review the selectmen and the park commissioner's budget. Before we get into that, I want to discuss where we are in regards to the budget, what we need to finish up, and planning our calendar. I know that's on the agenda after this, but I want to get it set now before people start rushing out of here and wanting to get out at, what was it, 8:26 tonight, I heard?
8:26, yeah.
On my calendar here, tonight, we will start reviewing the budget that the selectmen had presented to us a couple of weeks ago, back on December 14th. Anything that we don't get through on this budget tonight, I want to take it by departments, pretty much like we took it when we were addressing each department. Anything that we don't get through, I would like to meet next again, not next week, but on January 18th, and we'll finish it up there. And so if we end up splitting this in half, we end up splitting this in half. This will cover all of the different pieces that are in the town budget.
So we're not meeting next week?
No, we're not going to meet next week. I can't be here. But I think that with what we have to do, we don't have anybody else coming in front of us. We just need to pretty much vote on and make decisions on these various departments. After that, we'll meet on the 18th and finish up, and we'll do a review. I'm hoping really to get through the majority of the budget that the selectmen presented to us tonight, so that on the 18th when we meet, we can just finish up any loose ends on that and then do a review of where we are. And on January 25th, I want to have our first public hearing. That public hearing will be on the general budget, much as we did last year. We had a public hearing on the general budget, and then we met to address warrant articles the following week, and then we had a second public hearing on the warrant articles. I want to do the same again this year. So we're meeting tonight to review the budget. We'll finish up on the 18th. On the 25th, we'll have a public hearing on the general budget. We'll meet on February 1st for warrants, and we'll have a final public hearing on February 8th. That should set us up to be done before, what do we have to be done 25 days before town meeting, and that puts us right up against that schedule, that final. So the public hearing on the 8th will, if we end up making any changes to the budget after public input on the 25th, then we'll be able to address that at that second public hearing as well.
We normally get sad attendance at any of our public hearings. It occurred to me that if we had Dennis make a sign, public hearing on budget, I mean, he's capable of making little signs to put in the dates as they change.
Yeah.
I think one thing to bring in mind too is last year we advertised all at the same time, which saved money also. There's both dates.
Ready to
Two
put
dates,
the-
even though we might not need the second one, we still put it and advertise it at one time, which is cheaper than trying to advertise
Right.
twice.
We can have them put that sign up, Monday. So people going by right on the monument, just like we do for elections. I just think it's important that
Right. The only other thing is, I don't know what we're going to get for warrant articles on the 1st, but that's when I would expect to have any warrant articles. The other thing would be to just have one public hearing on the 8th, but that would be our only day, and it wouldn't give us an opportunity to make
To
any
respond to
changes
anything.
from public, after the first public hearing. I don't expect us to get much review. I mean, I really, we haven't.
Didn't we post 2 dates at the same time?
We did. That's what, I think Joyce had done that for us. Last year, she had advertised both of them, and then the second one was, I think it was advertised the second time.
Yeah.
So that we had it out there 7 days in advance before the first one, and then, again on the first, it went out. On whatever that date was, the first, when we had reviewed the warrant articles, in order to make sure that it was fully advertised. I don't mind having the 2 public hearings. I think that it's, worthwhile to do so because of the budget, just in case there's any changes that need to be made. And in this case, I mean, I'm not sure what we're going to have for controversy in the budget, but we'll find out. Well, does anybody have any other thoughts or questions?
We do have a few changes. to submit to you.
On the budget itself, I'll address that when we get back on that. I just was thinking more on the schedule here.
sounds good.
Sounds good? All right?
What's the date of time?
You agree, John? Thank you. Doing pretty much the same thing that we did last year. We'll have a public hearing on the budget, and then do the review warrant articles, and then have a public hearing on the warrant articles.
What's the date of
That
town
worked
meeting?
really well.
Dates if you want to write this down.
I have town meeting on March 10th. Saturday, March 10th. Does that sound right? No? We doing it a different day?
Town meeting is the second Tuesday in March,
It's the
and the
17th.
deliberative session is the following
March
Saturday.
17th.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong, yeah, okay.
It's a calendar. If you-
And you're not Irish.
Voting is the 13th.
13th and 17th.
Right, I was looking at the first Tuesday and the second Saturday, so. Okay, that definitely gives us ample time. On the 17th,
That's a
if you want to bring green beer to town meeting,
I'm in.
You can't come if you're not Irish.
good thing I'm Irish. I can go.
And then I'll have to bring orange beer if that has to be my Irish root, so.
That's why Tanya Tucker is Irish.
Yeah, that's why, so that she can drink on St. Patrick's Day? Good idea. All right.
So when is the public hearing? When are you proposing the dates of the 2 different public hearings then?
The 25th of January for the first public hearing, and then February 8th as the final public hearing.
Both at 7 PM.
Both at 7 PM. Yep. Alrighty. On to the budget. Pat, you said that there were a couple of items on the new budget, are that you just, a couple of changes that were made to what you'd presented to us a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, under the highway. Highway health is increased to 85,647.
Which line, number?
Right here.
Line 240.
Page 5.
Okay.
And then where we took that, as information came in, and we were able to take it out of the line item on page 6, sanitation curbside contract.
Okay.
So we brought that down by 14,649. That's the difference.
So it's still the same bottom line? Or is there a...
How come it's such a jump on that? Oh, okay. So it isn't an increase as far as in rates, it's more of just a change in how many people are on the policy?
Right.
Can you give me that number? Oh, never mind. Oh, it's right here.
It's right, it should be on page 6.
Okay.
So the curbside contract is 109,101.
And they took it from page 6, the next page. Sanitation curbside.
So the curbside pickup contract is almost level for the last 3 years?
Get a lot of money.
Yes.
All right. Put my pages back together. Without objection, I want to start at the top and work our way through it. We won't miss anything. Some items will probably garner more discussion than others. The administration department, the actual budget, and what I was looking at, though it's not necessarily what you're seeing here, but it's pretty close to what you're seeing here, is I was looking at our actual budget that we presented at town meeting, which would therefore not reflect the changes that were due to anything that was encumbered from the previous dollars that was not, I compared our numbers to exactly what we had presented to the town at town meeting. When I was looking at this, I wanted to be able, in my mind, to have as close to an actual balance as to what we had presented. But based on that, the administration budget has an increase on it of 3.29. Part of that is due to the changes that were made to the selectman's assistant. Part of that is general legal expenses. Part of that is that we have changes in the janitorial. We went from having an in-house person doing janitorial to a service contract doing it again. Part of it, is that we now have a merit raise pool in there that we had taken out last year. And part of that is the increase into the health insurance policy. Based on that, the budget that was presented to us is up, as I said, 3.29% from what I had for figures. Not terrible. Everything else looked like it was within tolerances, and I've given you mostly the things that have increased and not necessarily all the things that have decreased. I'll let people start the discussion at that point. I'm not hearing a lot of discussion. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to this? Anything else they want to change? Anything that they think is too high or too low that should be adjusted?
That's a question for clarification. The 3.29, are you referring to the admin?
Just the administration portion of the budget. Just that section that is listed under that department head, total administration.
Because in the 2010 town report, the budget that we printed for the administration was $536,911. The selectmen recommended is $546,305, which is a difference of $9,800 for 1.8%.
Are you looking at what the budget committee or the selectmen's budget?
Budget committee in the town report, not what was approved, but what the budget committee recommended in the town report was $536,911. And the difference is 94 or 1.8%.
What was it in the figure now? 94?
It's 98.4.
I didn't think I needed that.
Unfortunately, I think that's what happens when you change the 2011 budget in this printout that we get here, compared to what goes in front of the town, what we present to the townspeople and the legislative body actually votes on. The numbers are changed, and I brought that up before, that the numbers aren't the same numbers that were brought to the people.
Tim, the reason why there's a discrepancy between what I'm looking at and what you're looking at there is because in the administration section in the town report, it includes the Park Cemetery and the Lakes Region Planning, which have been moved out of this section into another section. That's why my total is different. Okay. Those numbers I put into whatever their current columns were in going through. Which is also because things get changed and they get moved, and I tried to be very careful that I caught the right numbers, so you had me scared there. So what I had for a total for the annual report under the administration line was 528,924, and that was less those two, that was almost $10,000 for those two lines. Not, it was less than 10,000, probably closer to 8. Now you got my heart racing, Tim. God, thinking that I really messed up. All right, I don't see anything other than that we all, I for one, am concerned about the merit raise pool just because of the economy the way it is, but I don't have a real objection to it. So
I have to agree with that. I think that, I mean, it's reasonable to look at that every 2 years. I don't think it's reasonable to have that budgeted every year. I mean, I just think that the way the world works right now, but I do think it's reasonable to leave it in this year.
I also think it's reasonable to leave it in because we've had a lot of groups come before us, and I believe in every one of them there's been around 2.5% at least merit raise in all of those. So I think we should at least treat our employees exactly the way others are treated. We voted to accept their budgets.
I think it's something, as Lynn states though, Jane, that is something that they can't expect to have in there every year.
I didn't say that it was. I'm just saying,
Depending on the conditions of the economy and what the actual person, the taxpayer, is facing too. We have to take that in always into consideration.
I'm only discussing this year. I'm not talking about what we're going to do next year or anything. I'm just saying that this year I think that it's fair to do that.
How is the merit raise given out? What determines, is it just a percentage
The
across the board?
department heads do a review of each employee and a recommendation. The selectmen then take them and look at them and determine a percentage according to, performance.
Is there a standard ranking? This is a pretty subjective process.
We've had department heads recommend no merit raise for their employees because they saw no improvement in their performance for the year. So they weren't given out. It's a true merit raise. There's nothing automatic about it.
I know...
Except for in the union.
Well, that's
Yeah.
We know
different
that.
issue.
In this economy and the way wages work, if somebody's making, let's say, $80,000 a year, and they get 3.5%, that's a substantial amount. Is that considered in? Whereas you might have someone that's making $20,000 a year, and it's a little, with the rising prices, it's harder for the $20,000 person to survive than...
We will often take the wage book that's provided from the local government center, which is a compilation of communities in the state, and compare them to communities. Well, it's hard to just go by population, the comparative communities of our type, and see what the prevailing wage is, the average wage is for that position. If we're way above it, well, we're going to take that into consideration.
But then it's not a merit raise pool.
We take everything into consideration.
Right, but what I'm saying is merit is merit. Either they merit a raise or they don't. I mean, right? It's a merit raise.
To a certain extent, but we
Then
still,
it's
I think in good conscience, we have to look at that. If we have somebody making $15,000, $20,000 more a year than the average person in the state is making in that same position, why would you not consider that?
No, I understand what you're saying, but my point is then it's not a merit raise pool. Then it's a different kind of raise pool.
Well, merit raise takes probably 90%. I mean, that's, but the other is, we do have to consider it. to do due diligence to the taxpayers, I think we do.
So it's a fairly subjective process.
Well, like I said, 90% is based on merit, and the other 10% is where, because typically everybody falls pretty much in the average, but we do consider that.
Now, in regards to the PD contract, now, are they paying, is it this year they're going to start paying more on the health insurance? And what is the percentage, 12.5 this year?
Yeah, Pat was our
And then
negotiator.
14?
12 this year,
12 and then the 14?
and then 14. 14 and a half.
14 and a half? I knew there was a half there somewhere,
2.5% raise this year.
2.5%. raise. And the rest of the town employees pay, what do they pay towards their health insurance?
10%.
10%. Okay.
Are there any other line items that anybody would like to address?
Sure.
Good.
Electric. We got budgeted in at $6,500 in 2010, 2011. We've been pretty consistent on the expenses on it. And when did we did some energy saving things, including fans and stuff like that. How are we basing the...
We didn't do really any, we had an energy audit done, but we did not do any of those recommendations. We put the fans in as an alternative to air conditioning, because it's less expensive, and I can't think of what they call it when you have air conditioning piped in like it is downstairs.
Central air.
Central air. I don't have air, so when we got a price to do that up here, we pretty well choked. But as far as the lighting goes, the energy audit, if we had followed through on it, I think it was it $14,000 to do it all? Really what they were doing is reducing the lumens. So people would be working with less light. And it didn't make any sense because, as we all know, as
Particularly
time goes
highway.
on, we're going to have a much better choice for lights. These fluorescents, the balusters and whatnot, that's going to be improving. So we'll have an opportunity to do some energy saving, but
So
probably next year, the year after,
No, I mean,
as technology.
we're close to $1,000 over what we typically spend. We're like $900 over what we usually spend is... The 6,000 always seemed to cover it. We had 5,000. We increased 6,000, and we still didn't get an increase in the actual expenses. And then this year, we increased 65. How are we determining that it will cost more?
Projected rate increases, is that?
Yes.
Well,
factored
it's
into it?
rate increases, it's, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I think it's 5.7.
Yeah.
And every year, they predict an increase, or just...
I think you have to factor
But we
that in,
haven't-
though. I think you have to factor that in.
Then this electricity does not just power town hall. It's like the Christmas tree out here. We have dozens of light bills. The light bill on the island, which we split with Northfield now.
And that's all in
Those
the
lights should be shut off at night, they're on forever now, in the dark. Which is crazy.
Yeah, they should be.
Talk about conserving energy.
Well, PSNH is changing all of the bulbs this year in 2012. They've asked us to consider going to the midnight, turning them off on streets and places like the island at night. Just
On
conserve that.
streets? What streets?
We have a lot
To
of,
be determined.
Cecile's Folly?
Right.
but isn't the light, the street lighting for PSNH in the highway budget?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of streetlights, if you travel, especially the Route 311 corridor, you wonder why we're paying for that light, especially the ones at exit 20.
And it's, as Pat said, the lights on the island are on now. I mean, nobody's over
Those would
there.
be a good thing to turn in
I
on
think
this
the
program,
lights
is
in-
to say, yes, we want the
Specify.
photocells to turn those off at a certain time.
Is the park commission going to reduce some of the lights that are on at the riverfront park this year?
I believe those lights are off.
Are they off now? 'Cause I know
That was the
last
discussion
time-
last night.
Okay, because
We're not sure who turned them off, but
they
it
were
was
all on.
probably Dennis.
I guess the question becomes this: are we expecting more than a 20% increase in cost in that line? Because we've spent 5134 in 2010, and we spent 5163 in 2011, and we're budgeting 6,500 for that. That's $1,500, $1,400 over what we've,
30%.
are we expecting the cost and the usage to go up by 30%?
The rate is going up.
That's what I'm asking. Is
Well, we
the rate
ran-
going up that much?
For, I received back in October, when we were preparing the budget, an email from PSNH saying what the rate increases were going to be. And
24%.
I'm based on our usage, because I was going by expenditures to date through October, and what that increase is that's why I increased it $500. And of course, I can't put my hands on that email, but as soon as I do, I can email it to all of you. So that was just an estimate based on the usage to date and the projected rate increase. But we have some better numbers now for usage, that we can fine tune that. And we have been very good about making sure that lights are turned off, heat's turned down, and just a little bit better management of the building, even though it's getting a lot more use, especially in evenings.
I think that line could be level funded at 6,000. You'd still have almost a 18-19% buffer over what we've spent in the last 2 years. And I can't imagine, I can't imagine PSNH being able to get that big of an increase at this time. Especially how even we've been 2010 to 2011 with the dollar amount. That is as of the end of 12/31, right, Tim? With everything on 2011?
Not everything is, not all the expenses are reflected for 2011 yet, but as of the date this was printed, those are the expenses that we have posted so far. We're still receiving invoices.
But you wouldn't have received the December bill by now.
We would not. And we get most
So
of
the
the,
December bill's not there, is that what we're saying?
that's right, for electricity.
Oh, that's hard to compare then.
It's also, we're going to have the dehumidifiers.
See, I was going by what was on the thing, it says as of expenses as of 12/31/2011, so.
Right, but remember, a lot of
all not in-
bills for
But-
December won't come in until the end of the month. So they'll come in January because
But
December,
the previous year it did
we're
that
only
too.
in January
So-
I was going to
3rd.
say, it would happen every year that way.
Every year, the
so-
previous year would come in
That
next
was-
We
month.
have
The
no
other
idea
thing
what
that's
that actual
happening
number
is-
is the point, right?
The other thing that's happening is we're putting dehumidifiers in the basement. We have no idea what the cost of putting those will be.
It's not a ton of money that you've increased it by. I just think that it's something that would really need to be watched if that's the case. For the $500 that's extra that's being put in there, I think we could level fund it without it being a problem, but if it puts a little bit of a buffer in there. I don't know. If people think that we should reduce that and make that level funded, we can do that.
I mean, a concern I have is if we're looking at 2010 numbers that are for a full 12-month period.
We're not
and we're looking at
comparing.
2011, that's for 11 months, then I have a problem sitting here trying to decipher whether that number is right, wrong, or indifferent, because
I think,
we don't
I
have
think
that.
it
have
would be,
complete knowledge.
Scott, it would be the same, because every year you're going to have...
December's bill comes in
December's bill
January.
comes in January.
Yeah, but,
It's 12
It's
bills,
12
but
months.
it's 12 bills before.
Correct.
And one from the previous year.
Correct, so it's
Yeah,
apples
because
to
every month we
apples.
pay a bill.
Okay. All right, then
Every month we pay a bill.
then I'm fine with it, Jane, but when we was just talking a minute ago, it sounded like we only had 11.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Every month you pay a PSNH bill.
I think
taxes.
December's bill should come in considerably lower
this year?
this year because of heat and the electricity with
How do we
that.
heat
But
when town hall? Gas? Because that's gone down considerably. And you can see that in the 2 years from 2010. Last year it went down 19 cents a therm less.
Well, we're also putting the humidifiers downstairs.
that is,
All
that
right.
does cost more, so.
I guess the question is does the committee want to change that to level funded or leave it the way it is?
I think we should just leave it and insurance over $50.
Were there any other line items in the total administration that anybody,
The only other concern I have, and I'm just going to raise it now instead of raising it later, is the janitorial lines.
Yeah,
Both
they
in
make
that
me
and the
crazy.
PD. I just, I look at that, and then I look at the part-time help that they want to hire for the park, and I just come back to it just seems that we're creating, we had an individual, I think, that did that for a while, and we had an individual that did the mowing of the park and stuff. We purchased that zero-turn mower, and I think outside the box, and I say, why aren't we trying to combine a part-time, year-round position to cover a lot of this stuff?
Like a
such as the
maintenance
mowing,
person?
The maintenance, yeah, the maintenance, the janitorial, the park, and kind of put that all together as one person and have a position that's...
Because we've tried doing that. We had that person, and it was never adequate, and he did cleaning, and he never really, I've got a whole list of things that the part-time person will do in the park, and I think it was previous to 3 years ago, Dennis used to hire a summer person every year, and it was to help maintain the grounds, to do all these little incidental things that aren't janitorial. When we had the individual doing the janitorial work, there was always paper missing in the bathrooms, I probably cleaned the bathrooms at Riverside 6 times that summer. Just going over there and looking, going, whoa, all the paper on the floor, just tidying it up. The part-time person that the commissioners of planning would like to hire is really the same person that the highway department hired for years.
Yeah, but see,
And it's not janitorial work.
I hear the park commission, Catherine, and I know we're in the administration, but it all goes into one. I hear they're complaining that the job wasn't up to their standards, so on and so forth, and we read the minutes. It just strikes me odd that we have no problem with the highway department, with whatever else they carry out in town. We have no problem with the way Dennis carries out his budget, but yet they have a problem with how things were being done. And I look at it, if you can do it in-house, to me...
It wasn't
you have-
Dennis or
No,
his
no.
crew, it was a part-time person.
But wasn't it under Dennis's oversight?
It was under Dennis's and the park commissioners and town hall. This person was a floater.
But I just...
We put him in Dennis's budget because if there wasn't something to do at Riverfront, then Dennis specifically would, if he had something to do, he could do something for
I'm not
Dennis.
saying we...
Like mowing the cemeteries and that sort of thing.
I'm not saying we don't need to maintain it, I'm totally in agreement with that. I'm just saying I don't think we're being as cost-effective as we can with some of this. that's
We
going
have
on.
never
It's also
had
very
good
difficult to
luck
track it from one year to the next.
hiring an individual to do the cleaning in Town Hall, in Riverfront Park, anywhere. We have never had good luck. It's just been a nightmare. A cleaning company doing the janitorial is You can call them on the phone and say, hey, you missed a spot, and they're right over here, and it doesn't cost you extra hours. I mean, it depends on how you want things done. We can go back to hiring an individual to do the janitorial, but you're not going to have a clean town hall. You're definitely not going to have a clean riverfront park.
Nor a PD.
No, nor the PD.
There were a lot of issues with the PD, and there were huge issues with Town Hall. And most of the administration and staff here at Town Hall ended up doing a lot of the cleaning because we were in between people. We had 3 or 4 people come, go, weren't doing the job, we let them go, and it was atrocious. And they were a month and a half before we were able to come to a consensus on a cleaning company versus a regular person. Sandy and I interviewed 14, 15 people, and some were available on some days and some were available. The ones that were available all the time wanted an enormous amount of money. Some people only wanted it for a couple of months and then they were off to Florida someplace, and they were very different. It was very, very difficult to pin anyone down to have a regular schedule, and you'd be chasing after them, and it would be more time and energy for our staff here at Town Hall looking over that than it would be what we're doing right now with the maintenance people. They come in the morning, they're out before anyone starts their work. There's notes left for them. Extra work needs to be done. It's done. Rarely do they ever have to call and say, sorry, you missed a spot. Get this done.
And you don't have to pay them benefits either, do you?
Well, you wouldn't pay a part-time person benefits either.
You
No.
still
Yeah,
have
but if
Pikey
you
and Mount.
start combining the way you're talking, you're not talking about a part-time person anymore, you're talking about a full-time person.
You'd be I don't think...
And then will you be paying benefits? I think
Yourself came and cleaned Town Hall one day.
I have
Norm
another
came and
question.
vacuumed one
I was
time
asked to empty the
because it
trash
was
one day.
Yeah, I constantly emptying the trash. Not anymore.
I would rather see it be one way or the other and stick with it and have it work.
This is the most effective.
This has worked fine now for about a year. It's worked nice, no problems. Like to keep it that way.
How long have the cleaning companies been coming in now?
Just about a year.
Because we didn't have them billed that way last year. We had it as the part-time person.
Started in May,
April, May.
April, May.
There's also, we now have $1,600 or $1,661 in janitorial supplies.
I had
Do
to
we do
break
before?
that out so that we could just see a true cost, or was a cost to clean, the supplies and the labor, because we buy some of the supplies, the paper.
Right, they come in and
Et cetera.
they'll clean, but they're going to use your own toilet paper to put it on the roll.
So that would be the difference between the 2011 of $3,095 versus the
It's
recommended
not a
next year?
clear picture right now, Tim would have to explain it to you, but I asked that be done, I just think it's more transparent.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is, we've got $3,095 spent in 2011, and then 2012, we have $4,635 plus 1,661.
So
So that's-
62.96.
But that was your paper supplies as well.
Where was that
Paper,
before?
soap, Cleaners.
This is just janitorial cleaning supplies. Your other supplies are going to be under,
That 1,661, it was spent previous years under a different line?
I think she was saying it was
Tim,
just
where was that?
janitor,
Yeah, that's
just,
what I'm looking for.
it was in, under highway. I believe, didn't we put it all under one?
Joyce and I went through and we pulled out all the janitorial costs
Right.
over the
They
years.
should go down by 16.
We never broke it out before. That's why you really can't
It's split between
compare it.
Town Hall, Park Commission, and Police Department
And TV.
currently. And I've got it here somewhere, so I can find it.
So everybody has a charge of 1661 or something?
No, I think we only put it in the admins. We make one purchase, and then it's divvied up where it's needed. So rather than trying to break it up by department, we just put it in one place.
Okay, I see. Where would it have been reflected in the departments before, though?
Because I can't seem to find it.
Would have been under janitorials.
But I don't see.
It was combined janitorial, the job in the,
And underneath the PD, there's janitorial service supplies,
Under highway department, I don't see any of it.
but I don't see any in the highway
I
department.
don't either.
There isn't, not in highway, it's only in PD.
In town hall, you had janitorial supplies in the 2011 budget we presented last year at both the selectmen and the budget committee was $800.
I just have how we put together the budget for 2012.
Yeah, you have that sheet? Okay, that's what I'm looking
I know the supplies, we just did as an average.
for. Right.
It's going back to 2010.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I asked you.
We had to buy them before.
I don't think, everybody was buying their own. Now we've tried to combine it, so we make one purchase. If we're making one purchase.
If these were all taken out of different lines and all put into under town hall for janitorial supplies,
Yeah,
then
but the
the
police
core-
still has janitorial supplies. It's the highway that doesn't.
Right, but if
because
it's
the
all-
police were still purchasing their own. We'll try to phase it out so it's just one. We switched purveyors for our janitorial supplies this year. They will deliver instead of us picking it up. We'll make, we'll purchase for all departments in one order instead of the PD ordering their own and the highway buying what they want, town hall buying what they want, and the park commissioners buying what they want.
Food for thought, Catherine, in the future, when there's lines combined like that, it'd be nice to have a little footnote at the bottom saying this line is made up from previous year being bin, different line numbers, because when you look back on what we presented to the people last year, you've got the janitorial supplies, and you've got an account number for every one of those.
Yeah, it was good see.
And if that's what happened, is we've taken from those lines, like janitorial supply last year in town hall was 016241949938.
Well,
And if
it's
those-
the same line item in,
I know.
385.
But what I'm saying is, if in that line, okay, there was, as you're stating, like the PD had a line where they bought janitorial supplies, such as paper and so on, and you brought them all together, a footnote at the bottom of the page for that line, or over here on the side or something, would be beneficial as far as for the budget committee to sit here and then understand where the numbers came from. Because when it shows when it shows zero the year before, and then now we got a line with 1,600 and...
Well, it wasn't zero the year before. If you look in the budget for the last,
No, but what is showing
it
here
says
on this page?
janitorial supplies. Oh, on this page, yeah.
On this page, and I'm saying we just don't have any
I don't think-
previous history information of where that makes up that number.
We can try to do that in the future.
Yeah. Just,
But like I
think it
said, this
would
is going to be a work in progress to try to track
But they switched
all of the
over.
But then we could
Now,
understand, because we could look back and say, okay, here's the three lines what built up that line.
Well, I don't think you could have,
Maybe we should.
because
get that
That's like
information.
Nobody really knew.
Yeah,
When we
Dennis
go
wasn't
over it
really
again.
tracking what his
It
purchases.
wasn't included in any one of their lines?
Dennis
Meeting on
wasn't
the 18th.
particularly tracking
We have,
exactly what he
Give a list
needed.
of-
It was purchasing for,
Punch list
paper,
information.
toilet paper, paper towels. So it wasn't really tracked by department. Wasn't broken
so we
out.
don't know exactly how much money was spent in janitorial supplies
Not
last
exactly.
year.
Not exactly.
And that
Close,
we
but not
do
exactly.
know that the supplies were paid for out of what line item? That's the question. What line item were they being paid out of?
They were being dispersed against the town hall, the PD, and the Parks Commission based on a percentage.
Okay, what were those actual line numbers?
0178421.99-450 for the PD.
Voice and all. What we, PD and the admin supplies.
Okay.
I have a question too.
Okay.
And it's sort of jumping from one to the other. I know what admin, but in town hall, the janitorial service line is $46.35. And then if you go over to the police department, janitorial services, let's see, which one is it? Janitorial service is $46.35.
The janitorial services is for actually the services itself. There are no supplies under the PD.
No, I know that, but I'm just asking, is the janitorial service, do they charge, is it $4,635 for the police department, and then another $4,635 for town hall?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then what about the highway department?
They do their
They
own.
don't do the highway department.
Okay.
They just
All
do
right.
riverfront.
Well, then what,
Riverfront, the town hall, and the PD.
Where are the costs for Riverfront?
It's in the under
Parks Commissioner's budget.
Yeah.
How do they base that? I guess I'd ask the question, because Jane just brought up an interesting point. Town hall's much larger than the PD building, so how do they come up with their costs? Because she came up with the same cost
it's
for both of
exactly the
them.
same thing.
Yeah.
Exact same figure. How do they base it? Off square footage, off?
They do the square footage, and now that it has VCT tile versus rug, carpet, it's different. There are certain rooms there that are not, that need extra care. We have carpet, so it's vacuuming. They have to have it mopped and so on, so.
I would think the police would be a lot cheaper. There's not much room for any dirt
Well, they have a lot smaller rooms. It's
kind
like,
of packed in.
you think of how easy it'd be to clean up here.
Sorry.
But it does seem... it
But I think
doesn't-
we're getting, we're
Sorry.
beating this poor janitorial issue
I think
into
supplies
the
that you-
ground here.
Right. The supplies
issue-
that you see are in the town.
In the town hall.
In the town hall.
We know what's being
Our town hall
addressed
and
here.
police.
Those, what they have in that line item, the 1661, it comes from them combining all of the invoices for the year as to what they've spent, the town has spent for the year purchasing those types of supplies. That's what they're basing that number on. I just don't know. There's no question out there. Are there any other questions that anybody has in regards to the total administration budget?
Sure.
Okay.
What is general building expense where we spent, my question was, we spent $9,700 last year, and it's, although we budgeted 15.
We
That's
combined
61
two
Business Park Drive. That is 61 Business Park Drive.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Where are you?
okay. That would be page 2...
Line 480.
Line 40.
Oh, I
okay.
found
top
it,
of the
yeah, right there. Yep.
Can we put that on there, Pat? That is 61 Business Park Drive? Because I think that question gets asked every time.
It does.
You know, it's just not clear.
there's a reason why it's, even though we only spent $9,751, why we're still budgeting $15,000?
We have revenue that offsets some of that, but that revenue that offsets it isn't a guarantee, from year to year that we're going to have that.
Right, but the revenue wouldn't be listed here under
You can't
expenses.
subtract it, yeah.
The expenses are expenses, so,
Right.
I mean, there are expenses that are coming up now that,
So, under that line, under the total administration line, we have three basic items that are questionable. We've discussed the electricity. Nobody had any problem with keeping that at the 6,500. We've had the janitorial expenses explained as to what that line item, a new line item of 1661 includes and how it was compiled. And then we have this is a big one because these general building expenses, we've paid less than $10,000 in expenses for this year, and it's being budgeted at 15. We don't have any history beyond just this current year, 2011.
Right, but we've
So-
only had the building for a few years. It's like this year we have the mold issue.
right.
We're not certain if we're going to have to clean up that mold issue, or if we're going to be able to get someone else that we feel might be responsible to clean it up. The outside of the building, the bricks are going to have to be sealed, and again, is the town going to, it has to be done, so is the town going to have to do that? Are we going to be able to get, again, someone else we feel may be responsible to do it? Are we going to have to do it? and
Whether
then
you get
fight
somebody
with
else
them
to do it, whether you get somebody else to do it or not,
It's got to get
There are
done.
three issues there.
we still have to budget for the expense. If you get revenue on the other side, I think that's marvelous, but we have to budget for the expense,
We have to budget for the expense.
whether
That's why
somebody
we
else
left
does it
it
or
at
not. That's
15,000, anticipating the three new issues that have come up.
The north side of the building presents a water issue.
that is the information that we need as to why we would need it to stay up there
And
at
we're
that $15,000.
still not absolutely certain whether or not we have mold actually inside the wall, on that north wall.
Well,
We have to take the sheetrock down to address that.
see, I was under the understanding that the town hall repairs, line 440, which we only spent $11,000, but we're budgeting $25,000, was to include the brickwork.
That's the brickwork on this side of this building. That's the repairs that need to be done here. That's the humidifiers, we have to put up gutters, we have to address the drainage issue in between the two buildings, and again, seal the bricks. We have to do repointing of the mortar in the bricks before we seal them.
There's water coming in the water wells down.
Yep, we have to
Window
address the window wells on this
So the-
side
the
because
mold
water
is-
is coming in.
Business Park Drive.
I'm very confused. The mold is not here, it's at Business Park
Business Park
Drive?
Drive.
That's correct.
Business Park Drive has mold. I mean, you can go up there, it's on the wall,
Okay.
you can see it, you can touch it. Here we have an issue in the basement
Yeah,
where we
I know.
are going to develop mold.
I am.
If we haven't already, again,
I'm
if we
familiar with-
started taking the sheetrock down in the basement, we may find mold. We've had an engineer look at these things.
But it is there at Business Park Drive, we know that.
This figure you see for town hall maintenance repairs, the overage you see is based on estimates we've received to do some of this work. And it doesn't address all the issues we have with town hall. We also have a leak going on over here that we have to address. So we're going to get, this will cover the worst issues. Some of the more maintenance issues, such as, painting, aesthetic issues, we might have to let go for this year. And tackle the things that are going to deteriorate the building if we don't address them.
Does anybody else have any issues they want to address in regards to the administration budget? Does anybody feel that any of these lines that we have discussed need to be revised from what the selectmen have presented to us? And I'm going to make a motion that we fund the administration portion of the budget presented to us by the town selectmen at $546,305.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to fund administration at $546,305. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? So moved. Yay!
We'll be better on next one, but after that.
This next one's a big one.
Oh, man.
For the evening.
I don't know how much more I have in me, guys. Town clerk, tax collector. We have only a couple of changes, really, in this section of the budget that were of any huge dollar amount. The one was that was discussed when they came before us by Cindy, was the increase in the training and dues. It increased by $945 over what had been budgeted previously, and this was to get the assistant town clerk tax collector through the training program for town clerk tax collectors. The other issue is the town clerk tax collector election prep. That's going up by $22.60, and that's because we have more elections this year. We've got our primary coming right up. We have our own town elections. We have presidential election in the fall, winter, whenever they decide to hold that thing. So that's why that's increased.
I make a motion, we accept it at 103.20.
Well, that's
I
way too
second it.
easy.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to fund the town clerk tax collector portion of the budget as presented by the selectmen at $103,020. Do we have any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? So moved. Finance.
Oh, this will be a tough one.
The finance portion of the budget is a little bit trickier.
You say the finance director's a little bit trickier?
Something along those lines,
Okay.
Shane. I'm
I
not
just
sure.
wanted to make sure.
It looks, if you look just strictly at the numbers there, it looks really good. It looks like it's down, there's a decrease in the budget of 3%. The main reason that is decreased, a good portion of that, it will lay it right on the shoulders of the finance director for keeping our TAN interest under control. Thank you, Tim.
Good job, Tim.
We've also had some debt that was retired, so we have less debt going out. A big portion, so we've got $30,000 that we won't be paying out, or we don't have plans to pay out in anything in this coming year. If you take those lines out of the budget, there is an increase, a minor increase to the finance portion of the budget that I would consider basically just as operating portion of the budget. The main items that are an increase on that is the tech expenses. We had gotten a list of technology components back when we had our meeting in the town. They came before us that had outlined everything that was going to need to be replaced or upgraded or purchased during this time, and it increased that portion of his budget by almost $5,000. So that would be where the main part of the increase in his budget would be. There is also a couple of other minor items. The town audit is planning on being, the cost is a slight increase here, and some of the principal on long-term bonds is expected to rise, but other than that, there's nothing major on that line. Yeah.
So it's an offset.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve it at $719,950.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to fund the finance portion of the budget, $719,950. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? So moved. Okay. The next item is the land use section of the budget. This is increasing by 5% over what it was at our budget meeting, and last year at the town meeting. So I'll make sure my numbers are consistent. It doesn't look like that. It looks like it's a decrease here on the sheet, and that's because there is, under the budget line, it shows professional consulting. There was 7311 that was brought in, that was from, encumbered from the previous year on that. But it wasn't used, so it looked like we had approved more last year. Our budget that we presented was only for $2,000, which was level funded from the year before, and now it's going back down to there. So that, it makes the numbers be a little skewed. There's nothing major, it's a small budget, so small increases make it look better, make it look larger. The two main increases, there's an increase in the land use assistant, and then there's an increase for the master plan. But I believe that was just for the printing of the master plan,
Right.
correct?
And we're doing things in-house with that so that it won't cost us as much.
That's going to be excellent. So what is being asked for this year is $62,221.
What is the increase on the land use assistant?
Hours,
More meetings.
More meetings.
Oh, more hours?
just more hours.
Okay.
We had a lot more meetings. We had public hearing. Walmart was several meetings where we were meeting twice a month instead of once. So this was
MV Tractor, we met over and over again.
So you expect that same thing to continue in 2012?
I'm not going to say we expect it, but there may be a project that would come in that would require more. I mean, we don't plan on it, but sometimes it happens.
I make a motion that we accept the land use $62,221.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the land use budget at $62,221. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So moved. Yay. Look at this. We're at the PD.
Did you say adjourn?
No, we're not at 26 yet. And not at 8:26, remember?
I thought we'd go early.
No,
But
we're
we
getting...
were supposed to be on other business at 7:45, it says so right there.
She lied. We've already done all that other stuff. Now we're going to push through on this.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Take the others and just leave PD for next week.
Tony, what lines can we change?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much written.
The union.
On the PD, what lines can we change? None.
Well, equipment maintenance and repair, what do we,
I mean, it's minimal, it truly
what
is.
is?
I
had
just
a
have,
question when I looked
I guess
at
I
it.
just have comments that, I just want, there to be discussion, but willing to entertain any motions that are made.
I think we need to at least look through it.
Oh, no, I think we need to look through it, I'm just wondering, a lot of the
Some of
lines
this
are
is dictated
mandated
by,
the union
yeah.
that says you gotta pay this and that.
What is the, I noticed that the amount of 16,160 in the equipment purchases. And they've got that down from last year where we had the 25,055.
Do we know what's
The
planned?
radios, is it the,
No, because
Equipment
it's separate.
purchases.
Aren't radios, yeah,
I
communications
think
are
it was
separate.
radios that,
On 660.
We we decreased the vehicle. Are you at,
Your equipment purchases?
You got 16,160.
They're anticipating
we're
the
anticipating the
proceeds.
detailed revolving. detailed
Using those funds.
Using
To
that
offset?
fund.
Yeah.
To offset, we have $6,800 in that
Did
right
we-
now, so we decreased
Right,
it.
so
by
there would still be a car purchase, and it would just be, the cost is, we're only budgeting this much money because there's money in
Because
the
there's money
revolving
in the
fund that can be
Just
used.
a general question, and I know it's not with this budget. Did we have a chance to encumber any money towards another vehicle for the PD with the end of the year for 2011?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Okay, good.
Okay. The total increase, you guys ready for this, in the PD budget is 0.21%. Considering there is a $45,000 decrease in officer salary, this is not necessarily a good thing, that there's still an increase, because it means that these other lines have absorbed $45,000 worth of expenses. A lot of that comes in the compensated absences, the part-time wages, the holiday pay, merit raises are in there. The health insurance is a huge increase, as it was in the administration budget, and the retirement, Group 2 retirement is huge in there. That's where, so a lot of what we're saving is being eaten up in other expenses for employees. So it's all staying within the family, so to speak. My concern in regards to that would be any new officers, because if there are any new hires, not replacements from what they have now, if they lost an officer and they rehired, but any new hires could really strain this budget. You know, one employee being hired and one additional PD being
I
hired
think
for...
you put 5 nooses up.
So you just don't.
Right.
We have a just say no policy right now.
I like that policy. I do like that policy. I would implement it myself. I just wanted to get that out there. Yes.
I think the other line that's concerning too is again, and it's a management line, I think, is the gasoline on the PD.
Yeah,
Needs to be addressed as far as not idling cars anymore than they have to.
yeah, there's a $10,000 increase in that
Yeah,
line.
that's a huge increase.
That is a huge increase.
Huge
And
increase.
I don't see that same type of increase reflected in the Public Works, the highway budget, in their gas line. So I'm not quite sure why it would be needed out of all the lines, that it would need to be increased by $10,000. Not that I don't think
To do with
that...
all the electronic equipment that is turned on. They don't. The chief has been looking into a device that will not allow the car to use up all of its battery storage before, in other words,
And
if
it
you
will
have a
turn
car
on
sitting
when
there
it's low.
and it's not on, the engine's not running, so the alternator's not charging that battery, but yet you have all the electronic gadgets on.
But if a police car is taken to a store or something, and I've noticed it many times, I mean, if you live in this community, you see the PD, and you go out to exit 20, you see the car running in front of a store downtown, you come back and it's still running because the lights are on.
That's habit.
I mean, that's habit, and
That's
that
habit.
stuff could be
That's
curtailed
different. That's habit.
to save the taxpayers some money. I mean, there's no reason those cars can't be shut off. I understand when they're on a scene, then they might need communication with the radio, so on and so forth, but...
And when they're on detail, they have to
But when
run.
they're just stopped, or they're going they're into a store or whatever, I think that it's got to be directed that it's got to be shut off. Really should be, because this $10,000 increase is a huge increase in their gas line. So,
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't buffer that line, so that if they needed money elsewhere, they would have it to pull it out of there.
it may be, but you look at what they spent, though. They did spend $32,802, and that's
Yeah.
to the end of December.
And gas
this
is
year.
predicted to go up to $4 a gallon by spring.
Again, I mean, that's a,
Well, who knows? Look at what they're doing in...
well, that's my point.
What's going on with Iran right now? We might not even have any.
Yeah, we'll be a walking.
My horse can walk.
2 weeks ago, gas was as low as it's been in 3 years.
Yeah.
So
I know.
it's- it just-
That
there's
was-
no
yeah.
2
rationale.
days, it's gone up 20 cents a
It's,
gallon.
you know, for me, it's unpredictable, but the economy is predicting it to
But
go up.
I think there's
Lead
better,
bikes, yeah.
I don't think we're giving the oil companies enough of a...
Yes, that's the poor struggling oil company.
John, did you have something?
yeah, I've noticed, I mean, like the new SUV, it's doing patrols all the time, and I thought that was just going to be like a standby car. And those things chew up gas, and I just think there can be better usage of the gas, and I would recommend cutting that back some.
I think when you see part of the reason, I'm not sitting here to defend it, but part, as a liaison to the police department, part of the reason that you see more frequently the SUV in the last few weeks is because we've had 2 vehicles down. We have a transmission on one of them, and the other one is something over.
I can also say, living on Main Street on a hill, whether there's lights on or not, and they're going fast or not, they stomp on it going up that hill. I hear it. We sit in the house, we joke, that's a police car.
I've seen it.
And these cars are getting, there's no incentive to try and economize and save gas. And I think we still have the old SUV on the road too, right?
No, it's gone.
It's gone, because I saw it in the lot and it had plates on it,
You
right?
think there's a cowboy attitude? Yeah.
Yeah, and there, I mean, how many transmissions have we gone through in the last year? 2, 3?
Yeah, and this is part of,
Yeah.
you know, what I've had for issues before, you know, where all of our vehicles are aging. They're aging rapidly, and we're going to find ourselves really between a rock and a hard place because they're all aging out. They're all going to be in the shop together, and we'll see them out there on foot,
I saw
taking their
the
bicycles from home.
SUV going into the Market Basket parking lot, chasing after a car that ran the light, and I mean, that thing was leaning way over, all the tires were squealing. You got, the car, I just think that $10,000 in fuel and these transmissions and that is just going way overboard.
And I think Scott has a real good point with the fact that the engines run all the time. And I brought it up when we met individually one night. There was the SUV, when it was brand new, sat in Irving gas station for 20 minutes that I know of, and the engine was running. And I'm sure it was running because it was very hot that day. And, you know, they've got to learn. You know, I don't leave my car running. You guys don't leave your cars running when you go in someplace, and they shouldn't be either. If they're pulled on the side of the road, they always have it running.
I did my grocery shopping out the Market Basket not too long ago, and when I went by this new store down here on the side, the cruiser was sitting there with the lights on, running. I did my grocery shopping, I came back by, and it's still sitting in the same spot, lights on, running. And it was cold enough so you could see the exhaust going. I mean, it's not rocket science to drive by, and I mean, I'm not a fast shopper, so it's probably a half hour plus. And that's a long time for a car to just be sitting there idling for no reason.
It seemed, you know,
The chief's been asked to address that, but those types of things are habit.
you know,
Yep.
before
And I'm just saying, you see
we
them
didn't,
happening.
It does.
you know, the other thing, before we didn't have all these electronics in the car. We didn't have cameras and computers and printers or everything else in there.
But they don't have them on all cars, because remember that came up and we were wanting to know why certain vehicles were being used. It's only the 3 cars that they have it on, so that's...
But those are the cars everybody likes to drive.
Well, those
with all
are the cars they
technology.
need to drive because it
Well,
has the technology.
I understand why they need some of the technology. I mean, they can call in and look up, and they have access very quickly rather than
Eat a
delay.
dead dog, but...
But
Yeah.
there is overkill.
I mean, the Budget Committee has voiced these same complaints over and over. So, you know, at this point, they as of 12/31, they had spent almost $33,000 in gas. The budget here says 34, yes, that's $10,000 over what we had budgeted last year, but it's only $1,000 over what they spent last year. And as much as we might want them to stop idling their cars and do that,
We don't have any authority to do anything with that. And we're just voicing our concern as a
Exactly.
budget committee that we see.
Exactly.
I'll make a motion, we go ahead and we fund the PD at $1,746,368.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to fund the police budget at $1,746,368. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? So moved. Okay. Public Works. Somewhere I have here, a new page. There it is. Okay. The PD, we're done with highway. There I am. The highway budget has a 1% increase in it. $7,000 of that is, again, the health insurance. We have no control over that. The salary, the full-time salary line has gone up. The part-time wages have gone down to even it out. The merit raise pool is there. That's obviously, something we haven't had in there for a while. The diesel, and we were just talking about the PD, that was up $10,000. For the highway, it's up $2,000. Their recycling line was increased.
But it was because of an offset or something.
Right. And so there's nothing, again, there is nothing major in here that I feel that we can, I'd love to be able to say as a budget committee, well, let's just cut all of these large increases to health insurance, and the Anthem's gonna
We'll tell them what we're gonna pay
This
them.
is what we're gonna pay, and they're gonna cover everybody who needs health care.
But I want to get home tonight, so I'll make a motion that we fund the highway department at $1,033,373.
And I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to fund the highway budget at $1,033,373. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So moved. Okay. Next title, Health and Human Services. This one here is probably the biggest increase out of all the budgets that we have. It increases by 19%. The reason that this is going up is that the health officer, the salary for the health officer has changed. This is the one big change in this budget from previous budget, that is now going to a part-time position, unbenefited position. Whether that's what is needed or not, I guess would be the discussion. Everything else is either level funded, or the other one is the minor increase for the Director of Welfare, which was just ours.
Will you run that by me again?
The health officer went from $6,479 to $23,000.
I see the increase. Why was the increase?
The position has now gone to a part-time position.
What was it before?
What was it before? Full-time at 6,400, part-time at
It was a
23?
stipend, I'm
It
the
was
health
a
officer.
stipend. There was a stipend.
It was a stipend when the selectmen
That was a
changed
stipend.
that position.
Were they doing the same work?
No, it started out, it was, I volunteered to be the health officer, and I'm the one that's gone to all the trainings and the conventions, et cetera, et cetera. And when I became the health officer, they created this, just a set stipend, if you will, per week, while the position was assessed. Well, selectmen get busy, I never, and I just continued being a health officer, and over the years, it's just become, well, this is, for example, this week, this is January 4th, including Monday, I've probably spent, 5 hours, 6 hours today doing health officer stuff. Yesterday, I was out sampling, it's mushroomed. As our tenants know that a health officer is active in town, as I've worked more closely with Heather, I just am more busy.
Is it an hourly position, or is it $480 a week, or how does this work?
Well, the health officer is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've gone out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it should be a position that pays overtime, so...
The odds are pretty thin of going over 40, would they not be, or not?
Pardon?
The odds would be pretty thin of going over 35 or whatever.
It will not, it will not become a full-time position. I think...
$448 a week.
Well,
Yeah.
you say that, but it's already going from a $6,500 stipended position to a $2,400 position.
Well, when I first started out, I was picking up... My biggest activities was picking up dead birds and skunks.
So what has changed?
My original question was,
Who did
working
that?
with-
Who did that in the past?
It was done by 2 people in the past, and it was done by an hourly rate, far more than the stipend.
But also, the state has also cut back, so some of the help,
Yeah, that
some
was
of the
my
work
next.
that the state was doing, they're no longer doing. It's all falling back on the towns and their...
There's no longer a health officer liaison. They eliminated that.
The other piece to this portion that helped make the decision for us, if you calculate what the hours on an average week that the health officer has been spending, she's probably been working for $4 to $5 an hour the last 3 years that I've been a selectman. And the state agency is not, they've cut their funding, so they no longer have their liaison that's going to help out on some of these situations that are needed.
Such
But
as?
on the opposite side of that, on the revenue side of that, we can now petition the state for our licensing, to have the licensing here, health officer licensing, so that
Well,
would be a revenue portion.
What
Inspection.
Pat's talking about is we can petition the state to inspect our restaurants.
Right.
And with that, there's
A hefty amount.
really nice
Money.
fees you charge, and that also includes renewal fees.
Could you just explain to us what is the job description for a health officer?
Tell them the septic tank story.
Oh, no, we know the septic tank story.
Well,
I
that's...
just want it for the record so that people
Well, let me
know.
explain what the health officer's responsibilities are. 'cause
Exactly,
the job
this is-
description is huge.
Well, that's the responsibility
You'd
in
be
the-
here for hours for me to tell you all the details.
Well, we're beyond the 26,
I enforce
so.
the housing codes, 48A. Those are basic housing codes. Temperature can't drop below 65 degrees, rodents, pests, bed bugs all fall into that, hot water, electrical, ceilings with holes, walls with holes. Those are the types of housing codes that I enforce, and it's specifically for tenants. Some of that can, it's all tenants. That's all tenant related. 147 is, I call it suspicious substances. That's where septic falls into play, nuisances. Currently, I have a brook that's contaminated with E. coli that I have to test, that I've been monitoring for, I think I'm in my 3rd month of monitoring this brook. There's a culvert that's clogged. The brook is flowing over an individual's yard and driveway. Well, it's a nuisance, and it's covered under health officer because it's contaminated with E. coli. Is it a huge health issue? Not for an adult, but it is for a small child or a small pet. Let me think of some other interesting nuisances I've had. A person who keeps a lot of pets in their yard, and their neighbor complains of the urine and the feces smell. That's a nuisance that I can and have had to deal with. What else do I enforce? Septic is the big one. That's probably 60% of my time. Where that falls into play, where I don't have The health officer liaison position was eliminated. The Department of Health and Human Services is no longer going to provide that service. And what happens there is if I have a particularly interesting case, which I get periodically, I used to be able to call up the health officer liaison, and they would do a lot of the investigating. They actually, the woman that held the position for quite a number of years, usually had the answer. It would keep me from having to spend 3 or 4 hours sitting at a computer, going through books, trying to figure out how I can resolve this issue for a tenant or a property owner. Now that's gone. So it falls to the health officer to do their own investigating and bookwork, if you will. I do a lot of septic works. DES has downsized. They do not have a lot of people out. I think the last time they told me there were 3 inspectors for the entire state. So now when I have a failed septic system, I'm the one that's out in the field.
Do you have enforcement capability?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What, I mean, would say somebody was dumping into a stream or what have you and
They
creating...
don't want to see me coming.
Well, what can you do to them?
What can I do to them? I can fine them up to $1,000 a day. But I'm the eyes.
I'm
147, the nuisance law allows that. I have a copy of it if you...
No, I'm sure you know what you're talking about.
In fact, that's what I'm doing with the... Actually, I had 2 of those
What about the
cases.
big boiler that's been sitting on
Yeah,
Tryon Lane?
So you're saying because the state is withdrawing their people who would normally do your investigations,
Normally-
you think you need...
In the past years, DES has been diminishing now for about 2 or 3 years. When I first became a health officer and I was investigating septic systems, and I actually did have knowledge because I used to maintain a family-owned trailer park, so I know a lot about septic systems, which is unusual. But someone from DES would come out and I'd meet them because they also have a play in the septic system. And we'd both determine which way we want this to go, how are we going to enforce this. Now, that doesn't take place. I'm the eyes and ears. I go out, I resolve the issue, I locate the source, if you will, of contamination. Sometimes that's not easy. This last one took me, well, about a week or 10 days to figure out where it was coming from. I report now, I report to DES. I call them up, I let them know what I have, what's going on. I report to them each time something new comes up. So it's more time, because now it generates more paperwork, because now I'm actually reporting to a state agency rather than them coming out and creating their own reports and doing their own investigating. In fact, I just had them call me up and ask me to go investigate a system that they looked at 4 years ago because they're not able to come out themselves.
Well, let me explain my uneasiness with this, is that sooner or later the state is going to realize they do have some responsibilities and they're going to refund those, the Department of Environmental Services, the health officer liaison. But we are still going to have a $24,000 employee.
She's still working the same amount.
Yeah.
With even without that, Lynn, if you took her hours over the past 3 years and averaged them out, she's averaging 20 to 30 hours a week on health officer issues only, just on only. If you take that out, those hours, and average them out in the work that she's doing and putting out, literally just putting out fires, if she were able to be proactive in some of these situations, she would be doing us a better service to the town, being proactive, particularly...
But you're never gonna, I mean, that's just not the way that enforcement works. We don't allow for that. You know, you have to have broken a law for a law to have been enforced.
No, not necessarily. I'm investigating right now just an odor upon...
Well, but that means that a
Lancaster Hill
violation,
Road.
you know, if there's an
And,
odor, then there's a failure of a system somewhere.
What
That's the point.
But investigating that odor, I discovered 3 other things that I would not have discovered before. One of them is a potential source of contamination that I've already talked to the property owner about cleaning up. Done. I didn't even have to write him a letter. I just knocked on the door and said, hey. stop dumping your refuse down this embankment because the brook is 10 feet away. That was easy. So it does generate that sort of thing. The other part of this is we can be self-inspecting. We can be a self-inspecting town. We can inspect the restaurants in our area. Depending on the size, upwards of, and I've got 4 or 5 different communities that are self-inspecting, $850 a year, down to $35 for like catering trucks.
Right.
So there is a revenue that can be generated from the health officer.
One question, do we have a log or calls to service or anything? Do you keep that? Has it gone
I
up?
keep a diary, if you will.
I mean, so you can track that there's trends or, like
Is there
more
trends?
calls or,
Well, I can tell you when there's more calls.
I didn't know, like if, yeah, well, like the police department, every time they get a call or something, they mark it down as a call to service or something.
I keep a diary for liability reasons. I could certainly create something. It would take me a while because I'd have to take out some names and information that's in my diary to look at, but I do keep a diary of what I do. It's pretty detailed.
Why would you have to take out names and information?
Because I'm on people's properties, because I'm,
But, I mean, you're there presumably because they've,
but there are other
In
people
violation.
involved. Not just the person who's violating, but the witnesses, the other people, neighbors and whatnot that I interview.
that's not all a matter of public record, who makes accusations, who speaks against.
Well, they're not just, no, that's not necessarily people that have called me up and reported it. It's people that have knocked on doors and said, tell me what you know about this. A lot of people, especially tenant situations, I may have a tenant that's called up saying, complained about lack of hot water. That's a very common complaint I get. And when I go into the building, usually the apartment door's open, and I have a lot of other tenants, and a lot of them are very fearful if they complain to me directly and I use their name, then they'll be evicted. So even though I jot in my diary the name, I don't report it to the landlord.
In the case that we had with the sewer system last year, would that have been a case that the state would have assessed and would have addressed as opposed to you, Catherine?
Are you talking about River Road in
Well,
Lockmere?
I don't know where it was. There was a
No.
sewer system. that the
It's a
town paid
situation where
Overran your budget.
probably 3 or 4 years ago, if that situation had occurred then, I would have had someone from DES would have been there because the sewer was flowing into a small stream that was then going into Silver Lake, and I would have had somebody from subsurface and DES there. So I would have had 2 people from the state there. When I called and reported, I would have been there regardless because it's in the town of Tilton and I'm the health officer. But I would have had those other people there as taking care of those issues. As it was, I basically enforced the DES water laws as it pertains to the lake and the stream.
I guess my question is, Catherine, is before, we had never seen an expense on your line for a sewer system before.
I've never had to do that before.
So was that something, my question is, it's
No, that was unusual.
in the town before, was that something that the state liaison or the state DES department would have addressed, and that person would have been fined by them? Or,
No, that was an unusual situation. That necessary situation was strictly Town of Tilton health officer. The state actually would not have had the same authority to have that system put in and have the property liened as taxes, as a property tax is collected. They wouldn't have had that authority. That's only the health officer's authority.
So how long have you been working the hours that you're, putting in the hours like this?
It's probably been steadily increasing over the past 3 years, but in the past 2 years, it was a dramatic increase, only because I started working more closely with Heather and her tenants, and then those tenants tell other tenants, and
So it's kind of followed the decline in the economy.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I used to spend probably 80% of my time on the Main Street apartments. Now I'm in the whole Route 311 stretch. I'm all over town. From bed bugs to hot water to you name it. Mold is a big issue. Mold is a huge issue.
As
I'm-
people get tighter on money, they tend to complain a little more, so they don't pay their rent.
I'm
too.
surprised at how many young people have asthma. I am just so surprised.
I understand where this increase in this expense is coming from. I really do understand the need for it. It's just very hard to see that large of an increase in a salary line in the tight economy that we are in. I see the reasoning for it. I know what's behind it. I know that you're doing all the work you can there. Under that, I'm sure that anybody in that position would do so. It's just, has to be totally vetted in order to see if this is something that we really should be funding. It's harder to, because you're a town official and not just a town employee, so it doesn't, it makes it tougher. It makes it tougher to look at.
I can appreciate that. The other thing is, though, the health officer position has to be filled whether I'm in it or not.
If you take
And,
we took a look at the LGC standards for health officers, and for population and economy-wise in the different towns that we looked at that parallel Tilton was anywhere between $17.61 to $19.50 an hour. And what we're asking for is $14 an hour for 32 hours a week.
And having dedicated hours would allow us to be self-inspecting, which will generate revenues to offset this.
And we can't stress that enough, because there's a lot of restaurants, and there's a lot of catering businesses, and there's a lot of hotels, and every year they have to renew their licenses.
And I have been asked in the past why we weren't self-inspecting with Exit 20.
You know, I think this came up with the sewer. I asked about the grease, and they said the grease is coming from one of the restaurants, but the state doesn't go in there and check it, and it's causing problems with the sewer system. So, you know, I can see that.
Johanna and I were involved in that inspection.
What do you anticipate the revenue being, Catherine?
You know, I apologize, I meant to have some sort of figure for you, but I don't. As I said, probably, I'm just going to throw out the average fee for the sizes of the restaurants we have.
I was going to say, based on some things that Joyce and I had looked at in town, we thought the first year, depending upon when this was approved, petition was approved, projecting $5,000 for a partial year, and $7,500 to $11,000 thereafter, depending on the other types of fees that we can charge. Of course, those would have to be established, but some of the towns, their fee schedules are really pretty sizable. And it's an annual inspection fee, and eating establishments,
Would that-
preparation, you know, all different types. It's not just restaurants alone.
Depending on the size.
Would that then increase the number of hours necessary for this position and change it from this part-time position, which without the benefits, into a
I mean, because
Because-
essentially
I mean-
what you're saying is you're not going to quite cover your salary with this becoming self-inspecting. I mean, you're not.
I don't even think that's the issue. I have two questions. If the sewer situation, the septic situation in Silver Lake, the E. coli situation, if 10 kids were contaminated this past summer because they were swimming there, and they were hospitalized and sick, who's liable for that? Is the town of Tilton liable? Okay, so the health officer actually is the person who's responsible for that. So the town could be sued.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have a health office, if the town of Tilton is not proactive in enforcing
Okay, that
the
was
health
my
officer
point.
laws, yeah, absolutely.
So if you drop dead, God forbid, tomorrow, the town of Tilton would still have to have a health officer. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you would have to go out and advertise for that job.
Be kind, Jenny.
See, the Board of Selectmen in the
You
town...
would get the business, Scott.
The Board of Selectmen in your towns is your health department, and that's why it seemed natural to make one of the selectmen the health officer, because we are the Board of Health.
Well, it's just hard to separate it from you, and I think
Yeah,
we
no,
all
I mean,
are.
you- whether I
That's
fa-
why I'm trying to get the point across that the town is liable if something happens,
Yeah.
and we're not providing the service that a health officer, whoever it is, would provide.
Yeah, your biggest liability, my biggest liabilities are with the tenants and enforcing the housing codes.
You have been doing these inspections at this point?
The restaurants, no, we're not a self-inspecting town.
So if we become a self-inspecting town, that increases the hours?
Not really, no, because
What do we find?
the hours are projected as an average. I mean, it's a, you know, you think of the number of the restaurants we have and the number of days in the year. I've gone on some of the inspections with the regional inspector from Department of Health and Human Services. So I am familiar with what's involved in inspecting them.
I think the Budget Committee, and I shouldn't speak for us, but my fear is that we, again, create one of these ongoing, growing. And next thing you know, we're at $50,000 a year with full benefits and 10 weeks vacation. I'm getting crazy, but...
No,
that's where it starts.
That's strictly within our control. I
No, but
don't
it
see
always starts off
becoming a
small.
full-time job. It just doesn't. And we don't have to become self-inspecting. That's an option to generate revenue. Whether it becomes self-inspecting or not, the town of Tilton needs a health officer. If I quit tomorrow, no one is going to do what I've been doing for the past few years. I'm just, I'm one of those selectmen that's used to working for a stipend. That's just the way I am. But no one is going to step into the job I'm doing and do the amount of work that is currently required to do it.
Throw the dog officer in on top of this, too?
Well, I've been the cat officer.
Keeps hitting something
I've been
in
the
the
cat
backyard
officer
and
for a number of years, so. But, like I said, the self-inspecting is optional. We don't have to go there. It's a possibility for revenue.
And that'll be a decision that is made by the selectmen, the Board of Selectmen.
The Board of Select, well, I'm your ex officio member, so I can certainly bring it before you before we make that decision.
How much gas will you use?
Well, that's the other thing. I currently use my own vehicle, and I don't put in for mileage.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping the expenses to the town to a minimum. We
We're
appreciate
dedicated
it.
servants, and that's what we do.
We've raised our issues about this. Is there anybody on the board here that feels that we should not fund that line at that dollar amount? We all have reservations about it. I
I think this, and I'll just speak for the record, I think, we'll put it through here, but I think at town meeting it's going to get a lot of scrutiny because it's such an increase on one line.
And it should be.
They're going to ask a lot of questions.
It
so
should.
Just so that it's...
They'll look at the $100 down here. Argue, I don't know.
No, I'm just saying, if they look on the line and they see the increase, as some you watch them at town meeting, that's exactly what they do. They go from line to line across to see the changes. That's the only comment I'll make.
I agree.
And I'm going to make a motion that we fund the Health and Human Services portion of the budget at $109,833.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to fund Health and Human Services at the Selectmen's recommendation of $109,833. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed?
I'm going to officially abstain since it involves me.
Thank you. Motion passes, one abstention. Well, whatever
A
she did.
motion, it's 10 minutes to 9, we adjourn.
I second it.
We have, no, we have the parks
We have
left.
the park.
Yeah, that's quite
Outside aid, going, just,
Okay.
oh.
Yeah, outside agencies are all done. The only thing that we have left is the Parks and Recreation. I have a motion and a second on the table to adjourn until the 18th. That's a week from, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion?
2 weeks from tonight?
2 weeks from tonight.
Next week.
I won't be here.
We can't run without it.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, 2 weeks, we got parks, and then a final review, and we'll be ready for a public hearing. Thank you.